Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Speaking Sessions. I've got Eric Allen here. He was raised in a broken home, battled addictions, was jailed at 18, and bankrupt at 21, only to turn everything around. So this guy's got an incredible story. And so for 16 plus years, he is sober. He has a beautiful wife with 2 kids. He's a podcaster, speaker, and now helping entrepreneurs get known and noticed online. I hope you're ready for this because we're really going to dive deep into podcasting and it's going to be an exciting show. But Eric, give us a little bit more about you, what you do, and who you are.
Man, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show, man. It's truly an honor to be here, dude. So my name's Eric Allen. I'm the owner of Eric Allen Media. I'm a podcaster. I've done some speaking and video content creation. So brands will send me their products and say, hey, can you do how-to videos or box openings and fun stuff like that? So I've been doing that for about 3 years. I started podcasting in 2017. And really that was a spinoff of an apparel line that I launched in 2012 called Top Rated MMA. And so that's how I got into the podcasting world. My story kind of, if we go back a little bit, the quick rundown is like you mentioned, I grew up in a typical household, little league, Sunday school on Sundays. And my parents got divorced when I was 11 years old. It was a shock to my system, man. I didn't know anyone who'd gotten a divorce, didn't know who, didn't even know what that word was. And my mom got together with a guy who was very physically abusive right away. And for me, I didn't understand why she stayed with him and especially didn't understand why she didn't press charges. He probably had the cops come to our house maybe 5 or 6 times throughout the first year that they were dating. And I didn't understand that. And then they did the smart thing. They got pregnant. And in the middle of my 8th grade year, they moved us to from Eastern Washington, Tri-Cities area, up to Stevensville, Montana. It's population 1,200 people there in the Bitterroot Valley. And it was a beautiful area. We had 5 acres. They rented a house. And the house had 3 bedrooms. It was one for them. It was one for my sister and one for my brother, who's a few months older at the time. And they said, Eric, you get to live in the garage. I literally had this plastic tarp at the, one half of the garage that I had my bed on. And I had a fireplace on that half that would keep me semi-warm in those -degree winters. And, I ended up, the abuse continued. And one night it kind of got to a boiling point where, I was brushing my teeth. They came home arguing, wasn't anything different. But as I was brushing my teeth, I felt God say, man, you got to take a look and see what's going on. So behind me was the kitchen to the pantry to the garage door to my room. And as I turned around, I saw them, my mom's boyfriend on top of her in the pantry and just punch her in the face, one after the other, boom, boom, boom. And I was like, man, I got to get this guy off. So I walked up behind him. I grabbed a cast iron pan and I swung as hard as I could and I split the back of his head open. And he turned around. And as he turned around, I smacked him in the face and split his forehead open. And it was in that moment that I swung so hard, I actually fell over. And I remember him standing up over me and he was beginning to yell and he's bleeding down his face. My mom jumps up, lands like 6 punches in a row. Cops show up, take him to jail. My mom doesn't press charges. I got kicked out the next day. So I had 3 months left of my freshman year of high school. And so I slept on a bunch of floors of my buddies' houses and then moved back to live with my dad in Washington for my sophomore through senior year. But what that did was set me on this path of destruction for the next 10 years, where, like you said, 18, I was in jail, bankrupt at 21, battled addictions, was in the music business, for a while. And man, in 2004, I met a girl who came into a Starbucks that I worked at. She invited me to a church event. And I wasn't saved. I was, depressed, alone. And she invited me to, like I said, a church event. And then a month later was Easter 2004. I woke up in my buddy's basement after a night of partying. And I felt God say, man, you're going down this path that's going to end your life. You need to, stop going this route. And so I decided in that moment, I gave my life to Christ and quit cold turkey drugs, drinking cigarettes, everything in that moment, never turned back. And I called that girl up and I got her voicemail and said, hey, happy Easter. Maybe I'll see you at Starbucks sometime. And a month later we were dating. Now we've been married for 17 years, man.
Wow, that's an incredible story with a great ending to what you talked about. Obviously, it's not ended yet, but
yeah,
great ending there. And I couldn't help but notice kind of a little bit of irony. Yet you talked about Top Rated MMA podcast, and yet there was a lot of battle, like duking it out and punches in your younger years. So it's kind of ironic. I hate that you had to go through all that, but of course that's made you who you are today.
Yep.
So I'm sure there's always that silver lining, right? But
totally,
I just thought that was very ironic there. So I appreciate that background. But I know you are huge into podcasting right now.
Yeah.
And there's people like Ed Mylett, Sean Whalen, and we were just talking about how your episode with Brad Lee just aired. So
Yeah.
we're recording here in February right now, and it just aired. So how in the world, one, do you get these people on your podcast? But two, how do you get on theirs? And I know it was really only Brad Lee. I don't think you've been on the other ones yet,
Not yet.
but I'm sure you
Yes.
will be on there at some point. But how in the world do you get these famous people on your podcast and then get on theirs?
Here's the cool thing is when I started podcast, I had no idea what I was doing, man. I was in a walk-in closet, bad lighting, bad microphone. Like, the Shure mic here is my third mic I've gone through. I've upgraded the camera a few times. I've got lights in the studio now, right? I was uploading my video or my semi interview to YouTube, then sharing that link out. That's all I was doing for almost 100 episodes. And then somebody said, how can I listen to it on Apple? And I said, what the hell is that? Like, I had no idea. And, so started like researching, like, oh my gosh, how do I get my show on Apple? And so we kind of built it up from there. But my goal was always, to get names of people or get people on my show that had an impact on the world. And for me, I had already been podcasting with Top Rated May since 2017. And then I came across Ed Mylett in 2018. And I was like, whoa, this guy, he's aligning with my values, my beliefs. And I almost manifested into like meeting him. And here's what happened was I noticed he had a house up here in Coeur d'Alene, where I live, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And so I reached out to him on DM and I just said, Ed, what's going on, man? I saw that you have a house in Coeur d'Alene. I live up here. Hey, if you're ever in town, I know that you can afford it, but I'd love to buy you a burger. And that's all I said. And I didn't think any inkling of me that thought he would respond. And he responded back in like 5 minutes. He's like, dude, let's do it. And I was like, what? But here's the thing. I never ended up actually meeting him in person. But what ended up happening was I continued to follow him, continued to do things that he said. And then he issued the Max Out Challenge. And Ed's the reason I started the Eric Allen Show. That's what I'm doing today. It inspired me to talk with world changers, entrepreneurs, and success-minded people. And sorry, this is a long, drawn-out answer to your question there, but I had to give a little bit of backstory. So I ended up winning the Ed Mylett Max Out Challenge that he issued in 2019. And what that did was you had to submit a 1-minute story in your Instagram and then tag him. And you had to say like what you're passionate about. Why do you want to be so successful? Things like that. And then he took 2 winners, myself and Camp Agape out of California, and announced us as winners about a month later. And I got a phone call with Ed. It was just me and him on Zoom for 30 minutes. And it was a life-changing call for me. But that one call, I was able to record that and then re-release it as an episode of my show. So episode 12 of my brand new podcast was Ed Mylett. Episode 8 was Sean Whalen. And the way that I got these names is I book 99% of my guests this way, by the way. I shoot a DM in Instagram. That's all I do. And I never send a text. Like I never actually type up a message. What I do is I pull out my phone and I do a 30-second video. That's it. No more than 30 seconds. And I just talk right into the camera. And I just say, Ed, what's going on? It's Eric Allen out here in Coeur d'Alene. I know you got a house out here, man. And I just love what you've been posting lately, man. The daily Max Out tips are awesome. I'd love to have you on my show. Let's promote what you got going on. We'll talk soon. That's it.
Man, that is incredible. I got to say, there's so many things to talk about that, but that's incredible that you have that confidence to actually send them that video. Because you're right, if you're only sending a text, everybody else is texting, so you got to do something different. So you helped yourself stand out that way. But I did notice that you mentioned right there at the end, would love to promote what you're doing. Yes. I think a lot of people, when they reach out, they just say, hey, would love to have you on my podcast. And because all you're saying is I want to have you on my podcast, it really sounds like, okay, is there benefit for me? And of course there is, because, for instance, you be on my podcast, there's going to be benefit because your name, your message is going to get out on a platform that isn't yours. Yeah. But what other benefit are you getting from that? So allowing you to promote what you're doing would help benefit you even more. And you mentioning that up front, I think is really incredible. But how did you get the confidence and really even the idea to do that video instead of just reaching out over text in that DM? How did you decide to do that video and have the confidence to speak that video to these celebrities?
It's interesting. I don't know how much confidence I had when I first started. I just knew that I wanted to talk to them. So like I had no idea what I was doing. When I first started Top Rated MMA podcast in 2017, that's how I would get fighters. I would shoot them a message and everybody got the same message. I just changed the name, let's get you on the show. And I was like, I got to change things up here. I want to start really engaging with some of these bigger names. But everybody that has a podcast out there is doing the same thing. And we're going to send you a DM or we're going to shoot you an email, and they all say the same thing, but they never engage the person they want on the show. And if you want to get the big name guests, you've got to give them a reason to get on your show, right? So offer to promote this, whatever, like, don't just say a generic message, but I'll a couple things. One, mention something that they recently posted, or that post something that posted that really hits you. And then also mention something that they're doing that you can promote. Hey, I saw you just released that book. Let's get on the show and let's promote that thing, because that's going to give them some enticement to get on your show. Confidence, I think, just came with me doing it more. The more times that I did a video, the more times that I felt more confident. Now, I'll tell you, it's not always a one-time thing when I'm recording. Sometimes it takes me 5, 6, 7, 8 times to record that 30-second video that I feel good enough to send it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is just for clarity, this is all like unedited, basically. Like you say, just whip out the phone, take the video, and that's it. There's no like adding captions to it or making it look real fancy, right?
I do not do any of that stuff. And here's the thing is, when they get these DMs, there's no like comments or anything. I don't put any text message below it. So it kind of goes, it intrigues them a little bit. Why is this guy sending me a video? They know it's me because it's my face on the video and they know it's my account, right? And so they go, well, maybe I'll click on this thing. And that's what draws them. And typically I've gotten responses back almost immediately. And it helps that I have a beard. It helps that I have a flag, because I always get a response back going, dude, love the beard, love the flag. Yep, let's do it.
Oh, okay, man. I guess I need to try and grow out some kind of beard. I'm just baby face and I've got no flag behind me. So, all right, 2 things I need to work on now from
just
this podcast.
Make it unique, man. Like if you just had like, right. So even if you don't have a beard, like just make your background something unique that'll catch their eyes and go, man, I want to reach out to that guy.
Yeah, very, very good point. And I know that's definitely something I need to work on my background here. It's just solid gray, but you know, slowly getting there to getting everything. But that's really cool that you do that to be able to get those people on that podcast. And yeah, I'm totally with you to get that confidence to speaking more. A lot of it, I mean, obviously you need to get some knowledge. You need to understand how to speak, what to say through that, what you talk about what they've recently talked about on their social media. And then if you also say what you want to promote of them, instead of just saying in general, would love to have you on to come talk. Okay. Yep. Talk about what do you want them specifically to talk about on your show? So I think those are great points. And then, yeah, just having those unique things in your background to help just identify you and solidify who you are. I know, you know, Andy Frisella as well. And he's talked about in his early days about how his scars, while he hated them at first, that's what made him him. Like people would remember him because, oh, the dude with the scars on his face. And at first he hated it, but it's like everybody remembered him because of that. So it's like kind of a blessing in disguise, because otherwise he'd have just been another dude with, I guess maybe he had a beard back then as well, but just another dude with the beard. But instead he's like this dude with scars on his face, and everybody remembers that, but not his name. So, hey, you got to be remembered for something. Hopefully it's something better than scars on your face.
Right.
But if that's what it is, that's what it is. But yeah, those flaws that you think you have, those are the unique things that you have that you need to, I guess, really almost promote, if you will, or just let, you know, lean into those things, not really promote, but lean into those.
Exactly.
But I want to take it back a little bit.
Yeah.
So I know you've had some incredible guests on your podcast, and clearly it started a little soon. I guess you had one podcast for a year about, and then you started the second one for that. So episode 8, episode 12, that's pretty early into the new podcast, but still. And you mentioned it a little bit, but how did that journey start with getting your podcast, as far as the equipment, as the room set up and everything? You briefly mentioned that, but I want to go back, because I think a lot of people, when it comes to starting a podcast, they're really afraid to start without having everything ready. They think that everything needs to be perfect. And we recently had a guest on that talked about people recording in their closet, and you can see like clothes right above their head and everything. Totally. But what's your journey? I want people to be able to understand and be empowered that they don't have to start with the amazing microphone, the amazing equipment, the amazing room setup and lighting. They can just start right now.
Yeah, my initial podcast started because of a failure of a business that I launched. You know, I launched Top Rated May apparel company, and we ran it for a couple of years, and I got bored with it, and I decided that I didn't want to put any effort into it. And I actually put it up for sale. Some guy called me to offer me a few grand for it. And it was in that call that I decided I wasn't ready to quit. And so then my initial thought about getting a podcast, and I don't even know why I even called it a podcast. It was just like the show was what I was doing a YouTube show, essentially, is what I did. And I had a snowball mic that I got for Amazon for $45. And I bought a Logitech webcam. And I was, like you said, I was in a walk-in closet, and I didn't even have a light like in there. Like, I mean, I had a light of the actual walk-in closet, but I didn't have any special lights or anything like that. So, I mean, total startup was $50, $60, you know, and maybe it was $100 with the camera and the mic. And my initial thought to get a podcast going was just ask fighters, why do they want to get in a cage and get punched in the face? That was my one goal that I wanted to start out with. And, you know, but I, like you said, I didn't have the equipment. I didn't have a clue. If you go back to episode 1 of my show, episode 2, or even episode 10, probably, you can see the background of this walk-in closet that I was in. I kind of made it angled. So I had, you know, grunt style stuff at the time in the background and American flag and things like that. But you can tell that I'm nervous. I'm not looking into the camera. You know, I was looking at my screen, and I was recording shows via FaceTime or Skype, I think, at the time. And that's what I did for almost, the first 100 episodes of just doing that. And like I mentioned, like I didn't even know about Apple Podcast. And then it was about episode 100 that we decided to move myself into another room of the house. So I had a little bit of a bigger studio, and then we've moved that again. So I've had 3 moves in this house. I've had 3 different microphones, 2 different cameras, and 3 different cameras. And then now I've added studio lights. So yeah, man, it started with nothing. You can get a podcast going for free. I use Anchor. Some people hate Anchor. I've never had an issue. I'm all about getting a podcast going for free. So I do my own editing in iMovie. I use Anchor because it's free, and I've been able to just take it to where it's at today, man.
I love that. And so obviously everything's really changed for you there. And now you're helping people with podcasts and helping them get their podcasts out there. So I want to make sure I'm promoting you a little bit. So what do you do to help people? How are you coaching people on podcasting?
Yeah. So one of the things that I do is, one, let's sit down and ask you a couple questions. Like, if you've already got a podcast, let's figure out how we can tweak it. Let's figure out how you can land those guests. Let's figure out how you can get those reviews. You know, I'm blessed enough that my show ranked 102 on the Apple Podcast in the US for entrepreneurship in January of last year. And then in October of last year, I ranked 202 in the UK Apple Entrepreneurship Podcast rankings. And so here's what I was able to do. Like, if you're a podcaster already and you're just looking to enhance things, yeah, let's do it, man. I can personally coach you, you know, to just make some minor tweaks. It's all about promoting yourself, right? So if you can be consistent with podcasting, is huge. So if you decide that you're going to release on Fridays at 7 a.m., stick with that. You know, I first started, it was like 1 every 6 weeks, 1 every 4 weeks. And, you know, I never knew to build up my queue so that I had them in there, right? So if you're starting out, if you're a podcaster, you're just starting out, I would record anywhere from 3 to 10 episodes. I would say minimum, maybe even 5 episodes, have them in your queue. And then that way you've got 5 weeks, or if you're doing every other week release, man, you've got some time to re-record or to record some other shows. But have that queue of shows built up before you officially launch, because then it kind of puts stress on you. Like, crap, man, I just released a show. I got to go try to record and edit and then get it back in. Like, have that queue built before you actually launch.
That's a good point. And what about on that launch? I know it's an important thing to really help. And I know especially Apple, the algorithm, essentially, like, they want to see a bunch of downloads, I guess not likes, and reviews and ratings and everything like that. And I know some people, they'll kind of, I guess, gamify it, if you will, and they'll have several episodes to start. Do you recommend that, or do you feel like the consistency is a more important thing to really, I mean, obviously at the end of the day, to continue to do the podcast is very important, but do you think it's a good thing to have maybe 3 to 5 episodes to start, as well as have the additional backups or the ones in the queue also? Or how would you go about that, or coach somebody through launching that podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you've got that queue of 3 to 10, then you're good to go. Like, you don't need to release them all at once, right? Release one show. Maybe the first show is an introduction to who you are, right? And then, you know, I talk about the foundation for your podcast. Like, who's your show for? Like, what type of people are you trying to attract to your show? And what I always tell my clients is, like, whatever you're passionate about, talk about that. Don't try to fluff it. If you're into weaving and like heat pressing or artwork or something like that, then talk about that. But here's what I always recommend is go out and find other podcasts that are talking about what you want to talk about, because you can learn from them whether, oh, I like that, or I would tweak this, or maybe I don't like that, I want to put that on my show. So like go and listen to 3-4 other episodes or podcasts that are talking about what you want to talk about, and then make your tweaks from there. You know what they're doing, so just change it to what fits for you. And yeah, Apple has a weird algorithm. But when you first launch, get it out there to as many people that you know as possible. Help them to go and get those reviews. Now, I wouldn't recommend going out and like sending it to 100 people on the day of launch and saying, go leave me a review on this day. Because what happens is people that are actually researching you, they're going to go through and they're going to see that you have 100 reviews all on the same day. And they're like, well, that guy just reached out to his friends and had them do that, right? Those are all fake reviews.
Yeah.
So spread that out. Maybe do 10 friends a day, 15 friends a day, or every other day, right? So because they're all not going to jump on it that day, right? But if reach out to 10 people, reach out to 15 people. Hey, can you leave me an honest review? If you can get, Apple likes to see a bunch of reviews over a short amount of time, but not like in the same day. It's kind of a weird thing. But here's what I'd recommend: doing those 10 to 15, a request to friends and family. Hey, can you go leave me a review? And then wait a couple days, do it again. And then they can kind of build that up. And that's how I was able to build up, a pretty good amount of reviews early on. But now everybody that comes on my show, I say, hey, can you leave me an honest review? Every guest that, I work with, every show that I'm on, typically I'll reach out and say, hey, can you leave me a review, or do review swaps are good. Right. If you're just trying to build that up. And so then you start to get people coming on and there's like, hey man, thanks for having me on the show. And then, or maybe people just heard your show and they just go leave you a review. So it's been, that's the way to go, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's awesome. And I want to bring up a point you mentioned about speaking to one person directly. Yeah. And I had this question a while back and it was more related to public speaking, but they said, hey, what do you do when you're speaking to a larger crowd? So let's say 500 people versus a small crowd of 10 people. How do you adjust your speaking? Because that's obviously a very large difference between 10 and 500 people.
Totally.
So how would you relate that, I guess, speaking to a physical crowd versus a podcast with the whole messaging in mind?
I think that with podcasting, you can talk about whatever you want, and you can drill it down to what you want, what you're passionate about. Like I said, right? For me, I'm passionate about the stories, the underdog stories. Like I want to know like what people did to get to where they're at. I want to know what they're doing now, and I want to know what's coming up next. That's the theme of my show. And so I think people love other people's stories. I am fascinated with people's stories. I want to understand, like, what did you do to get to where you're at? All that stuff that I just went over. But I think if you're talking to, you don't want to niche down too much when you're on podcasting, right? So for me, I kind of spread it out. I've got guests that are on my show that are real estate investors, guys that are on my show that are massive multi-million dollar, Ed Mylett type level guys, right? I've got guys and girls that are on my show that are local entrepreneurs where I'm at. I like to intertwine some of those local entrepreneurs onto my show. And yeah, it's cool to have the big names, but it's not really the names that drive your show to popularity. It's the content, right? So who is it that, what are you bringing to the table? So you can talk to one specific, niche. But for me, I like to just tell stories, and I think stories sell, and that's what brings people to your show.
Yeah, totally agree. But I guess, so your show then, are you saying is more generic, or are you saying that your show is, or where would you tell people to go, I guess, kind of overall, be a little bit more general when it comes to the podcast, and then maybe on your social media, you're more specific, or are you saying that like also specific on both, or tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Sorry. But yeah, I would be more specific on what you're wanting to talk about. Right. So, you don't necessarily need to, pinpoint it to, like, if you're doing solo shows, you can talk about whatever you want. Right. And talk about, for me, I've got some solo shows that are going to roll out on forgiveness and setting goals and morning routines and mindset and stuff like that. So I keep it generic to that one kind of theme, but when it comes to posting on social media and stuff like that, I just want to encourage people, whether that's a quote or another show that I saw or another video that I saw. I want to encourage people with that. But when it comes to podcasting, I just say, talk about what you're passionate about, because there's going to be people out there that are passionate about it. Even if you think there's not a large crowd that maybe is into weaving or, quilting or whatnot. Like, there's a massive amount of people that are passionate about what you're passionate about. So I don't think you need to get too niche down, but talk about what you're passionate about, and that's going to draw people to your podcast.
Okay. Yeah. And just to give a good example, let's go with me. So being here, being speaking sessions. So for me, it's about helping people find that confidence in their voice and be able to share their message, whether it's podcast stage, maybe through a book or social media posts. How would I go about making sure to put that into the podcast in both solo and episodes with podcast guests, which of course they're going to be different backgrounds and everything, but how would I make sure that I'm not being just too niched and being stuck in one little thing, and I guess being a little bit more generic? What were some recommendations you'd make for my instance? Just
I think for background. When it comes to public speaking, people are scared about that, right? So like you said, you're going to help them build confidence. So, for me, I would say, talk about those tips, talk about what you do to prepare mentally before you go do that, or before you go talk, before you get on a podcast. I would bring on guests that are, public speakers and ask them, like, why did, how did they get into it? Right. I think as a podcaster, the reason that I started podcasting was, I wanted to talk to fighters, but I also wanted to talk with people that I wanted to like hear their story. And part of the reason I reached out to Ed Mylett and Sean Whalen, Tim Story, and Eric LeGrand was I want to hear their story. And then I thought, I'm getting free advice from these guys, but maybe I should share this out with people, right? Share their story, share their tips. And so that's really why I started a podcast. Originally, it was like, I was being selfish. I just wanted to talk to these guys because I wanted to talk with these guys. But I think if you can, for your show, right, go find guys who are big on speaking or gals that are big on speaking. Grab those people that are big around those tips. Maybe they've written ebooks or they've done videos on public speaking. And I think, but also intertwine their story, because like I said, people love to hear other people's stories. Maybe they've gone through a lot of failures to get to public speaking. Maybe they sucked at public speaking before they got there. I've done a couple of public speaking opportunities in the last couple of years, but nothing like in person. I've all done virtual bigger events and things like that. And I'll tell you, man, I was nervous. Even though I've been podcasting for a while, I was nervous to get on Zoom live and talk in front of 150 people, so it's all about, like, for you, I would bring on guests that are doing that. I would share tips that are doing that, because people they hate public speaking, whether that's in a classroom setting or in front of a big conference or something like that. So anything that you can bring them tips wise that will help them grow in that, man, that's huge.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you explaining that out. Of course, that helped me out, which again is why the podcast is so awesome, because you get to ask these questions, get that advice. But I want to give that more specificity for the audience as well, so they can understand more about the power of podcasting and what you really should do behind that podcast. So really thinking about that person you're trying to reach, because you're right. And I love all the things you said. Now, I do want to go back just real quick. You mentioned something about promoting that podcast and promoting yourself, essentially. And I think a lot of people, especially when they're starting out with podcasting or public speaking or whatever it may be, they're afraid to promote themselves. They don't want to look self-centered. So how do you get over that fear, and how often should you promote your podcast?
One, get over the fact that that you're too scared, right? Or that you're going to feel like you're this person who's kind of bragging about yourself. You have to promote yourself in business, in podcasting, in sales, and speaking. If you don't put yourself out there, you're not going to get any opportunities and you won't be successful. You've got to put yourself out there. For me, I decided that I wanted to be a guest on podcasting, because if I can go and join other shows, one, I can learn how they do things. I can learn what works for me, what doesn't. But also, two, it's a mutual relationship, networking relationship that we can go, man, hey, thanks for having me on your show. I can share your stuff. You can share my stuff, etc. Right? So I'm promoting my brand. So in 2020, I decided I wanted to be a guest on 50 podcasts. I only did 25. I was pissed. Come the end of the year, I was like, seriously? I did half the work, man. And that's all I got. And so in 2021, I said, I'm going to do 100 podcasts. I'm going to be a guest on 100 podcasts. I'm going to release 100 of my own shows. I was releasing 2 shows a week of my own shows in 2021. Top Rated May came out on Saturday, Eric Allen show on Friday. And so I was recording and editing those shows on top of my goal of being a guest on 100 podcasts. And here's what I did was, one, it builds your confidence just being on other shows. You see what's good, what's not, what's tweaking, how are people doing things right. And I finished the year with 117 interviews, man, on other podcasts.
Wow. And, overachiever then.
Yeah. I just kept pushing, man. And here's the thing is, I basically every day of 2021, I was either on a podcast or had someone on my show as a guest. And it pushed me mentally, but it also helped my confidence in speaking my show, sharing my story. It helped me be able to connect with so many people around that are doing podcasts and things like that. And then people would hear those podcasts and then reach out to me. Oh man, I heard you on this podcast. Can you come on mine? So it's massive promotion. For me, it was all about promotion, getting my name out there in 2021. And I saw a massive increase in downloads. I saw a massive increase in followers, and people were reaching out to me. And, that to me as a podcaster, as a business person, is the best way to promote yourself, is get on other podcasts, man.
I love it. So never be afraid to promote yourself, because nobody else is going to promote you. So you have to continue to do that. And just to clarify the question, how often should you promote yourself? Pretty much every day.
Pretty much every day, man. Pretty much every day. Always be putting stuff out. Like for me, I'm big on social media, so I am releasing a couple things a week. I'm not like, there's people out there say you should do 7 things a day and, all that stuff. For me, I try to do a daily video, and that's it. Even if you're just posting once a day, that's awesome. And just help your brand and help get your name out there, stay relevant, right? Do stories, do reels, do Instagram, all that, right? And for me, that's what's helped. So I would say, do a quick video or do a post at least daily, one time, right? It doesn't have to be 8 times a day. I would say just do it once. But when you're trying to promote yourself, I would try to get on as many shows as you feel comfortable that will fit into your schedule, right? So if you can get on 5 podcasts in a week, then do that. And there's lots of Facebook groups out there that you can join, and you can just post in there saying, hey, I want to be a guest on a podcast, and you'll get booked on 10 shows in a week, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. People are always looking for speakers. And that's what I noticed from Clubhouses. You get these celebs essentially that were always looking to be on some other person's show so they could promote themselves, which again goes back to what you said at the beginning, and how you got Ed Mylett on the show was by saying, I want to promote you doing this. And he's like, all right, awesome. I want to be on there, because it's a free or, relatively free way to be able to promote yourself. And of course, it's on somebody else's platform, somebody else's audience that doesn't know you. So then, you can keep growing that audience. So I want to ask you one last question here before we wrap things up is, what have you done to continue to improve your speaking skills? I know podcasting takes a lot of speaking skills and interviewing skills, really. But what have you done to continue to improve those skills?
Well, one of the things that Ed Mylett told me is right here on the wall, constant and never ending improvement. He mentioned that to me on the call, and I was like, man, I always have to be learning, always figure out how to level up your game as a speaker, as a podcaster. And it really is, the more that you do it, the more confident that you're going to have in your speaking. If you're a public speaker, just go out and volunteer, go to DECA, in high schools, and try to just volunteer your story or help people out, right? When it comes to podcasting, I say just get on there and do it. Don't be scared to put stuff out there. If you're scared to put stuff out, then it's going to be a long, hard road for you to get successful at that. And podcasting, as you know, there's, 2 million podcasts out there. But most people, I think I saw the thing, like statistically, 90% of the people never make it to 50 episodes.
Yeah, and then I heard somebody, it's like after 10 episodes, most people stop or something. Yeah. So for sure that 50.
Right. And so a mass number never make it to episode 100. And here's the thing, the more often that you do it. Now, for me, I do video content creation and things like that. So I'm always doing videos. So the more that you do it, the more that you're on camera, the more that you speak, the more that you're sharing your story, the more that you're sharing your products in videos. And I'm not saying just go out and like be this like infomercial guy and share your product or share your story every single day, engage your audience, right? Ask them questions, things like that. But the more that you're actually on video or speaking into a microphone, that's what's going to help you be successful as a podcaster or as a video guy. And, I'm still building up my YouTube. It's not like I have 10,000 YouTube views, but, I do have 10,000 plus downloads of my show. So, we're continuing to build that up. And so like I said, man, if you want to build your confidence, if you want to continue to grow personally, watch other podcasts on YouTube, see how they're interacting with each other. I listen to a lot of shows like Lewis Howes and Tony Robbins, Ed Mylett. I love going back and listening to guys like Jim Rohn, man. Those guys are the guys that fire me up. Inky Johnson, Eric Thomas, man, David Meltzer, like those guys, the way they talk, the way they're confident in that helps me in my own speaking. I just listen to that in the early morning hours, while I'm making my kids lunch or breakfast. I've got headphones in, I'm listening to that. So, surround yourself with the people that are living the life that you want to live. And whether that's in person or virtually, that's going to help you.
Man, there you go. And so if everybody wants to reach out to you, they want to follow you, get to know you more, or even work with you, what's the best place or best places to reach out to you?
ericallenmedia.com. It's ERIK and then ALLEN. So ericallenmedia.com is the website. I'm big on Instagram. I respond to every DM, every comment. It's just Eric G. Allen on there. And I do have an ebook that, will probably be released by the time this video drops. But it's my journey of being a guest on a 100+ podcast in 2021. And so I'm going to walk through the steps of how you can get booked on 100+ podcasts in a year, how you can promote your podcast. And that book is going to be available on my website here soon.
Nice. That's awesome. I'll definitely be putting that in the show notes. I've got to get that ebook from you as soon as that releases. Eric, really appreciate you having you on this podcast. Is lots of knowledge. Love the stories. But man, I just really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, man. It's been an honor to be here. It was a great conversation, man. Definitely one of the top shows I've been on, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, man, I appreciate you giving me that compliment.
Come on, dude. I'm serious. Like when you're on 117 podcasts, I saw some shows that were really good, and I saw some shows I was like, what the hell is going on right now? Like, but dude, this is a great show, man. People need to be watching and listening to this show for sure.
I appreciate it. All right, y'all take care.